Ambassador Elena Reyes jolted awake, heart hammering against her ribs as the diplomatic channel's highest priority alert pierced through her quarters. The sound, a shrill, pulsing tone designed to cut through any sleep cycle, hadn't been used once in her 15 years of service. Lights, she gasped, already reaching for the responsive fabric of her formal diplomatic attire. The room illuminated to reveal the organized chaos of her private quarters aboard the human diplomatic vessel Concordia. Channel status. Priority Alpha 1, responded her AI assistant's calm voice. Full conclave emergency session declared. Attendance mandatory within standard cycle. Current station time, 4:27. Elena's fingers fumbled with her collar insignia. The Earth emblem seemed particularly small and insignificant this morning. In her decade and a half representing humanity to the Galactic Conclave, there had never been an emergency session, let alone one called during station night cycle. Any details on the nature of the emergency? She asked, splashing cold water on her face. Classify beyond your current access level, Ambassador. That was unusual enough to make her pause. As humanity's sole representative to the Conclave, she possessed the highest security clearance Earth's government could grant. Whatever had happened must be catastrophic. 30 minutes later, her diplomatic shuttle accelerated through the gleaming hyperspace lanes that connected the massive orbital station known as Harmony Nexus to its outlying diplomatic housing rings. Through the viewport, Elena could see dozens of other shuttles converging on the station, representatives from the 27 advanced civilizations that formed the Conclave, the governing body that had maintained interstellar peace for millennia. Her shuttle docked with practiced precision, and Elena strode through the adaptive atmospheric chambers that adjusted seamlessly from Earth-standard conditions to the Conclave's neutral environment. In the grand reception hall, she noticed something unprecedented. Fear etched across faces, appendages, and sensory organs of species renowned for their emotional control. Ambassador Reyes greeted Nithshar, her Selvari counterpart whose silvery skin rippled with visible anxiety patterns. You've heard then. I've heard nothing, Elena admitted. Only that attendance was mandatory. The Selvari's primary eye cluster widened. The Harbingers have returned. Confirmed sightings in the Peliac sector. Elena felt the blood drain from her face. The Void Harbingers, creatures of such ancient terror that most considered them mere myth. Beings that had nearly extinguished all life in the galaxy 50,000 years ago, before mysteriously retreating beyond the cosmic veil. That's impossible, she whispered. 3 systems are already gone, Nithshar continued, voice dropping to a harmonic whisper, including your research outpost at Proxima Ta. 8,000 human lives, scientists, engineers, families, gone in an instant. Elena steadied herself against a nearby support column. The assembled diplomats began flowing toward the cavernous conclave chamber at the station's heart. Elena squeezed past the massive exoskeleton of a Krell diplomat, nearly stepped on a delegation of diminutive coral, and finally reached humanity's modest seat, positioned nearest the exit, furthest from influence, as befitted the youngest member of the conclave. The chamber itself was an architectural marvel designed to humble newcomers, soaring crystalline arches that captured and refracted light in patterns that induced calm in most sentient species, neural resonant sound dampers that created perfect acoustic balance, gravity adjustments subtle enough to remind each member they were guests in a carefully neutral territory. Her assistant whispered the full briefing into her earpiece. 3 outlying systems completely obliterated, unusual energy signatures matching ancient records, and estimated arrival trajectories that put multiple core worlds at risk within months. The Harbingers weren't just back. They were advancing faster than before. The High Arbiter, a 12-limbed metrarch, whose species currently chaired the conclave, activated the central communication node with a harmonically perfect tone that resonated through specialized chambers. Esteemed representatives, the metrarch began, compound eyes blinking in a precise rhythm. We face a crisis unprecedented in modern times. The collective intelligence networks have confirmed with 99.7% certainty that the entities known as the Void Harbingers have returned from beyond the galactic rim. A murmur rippled through the chamber, not the chaos Elena would expect at home, but a controlled, modulated disturbance that quickly subsided as the Metrart raised its primary limbs. As protocol demands, we will proceed with assessment of verification protocols as the first step in our response, the Arbiter continued. The preparatory committee will need approximately 6 standard weeks to. 6 weeks. Elena interrupted, breaking protocol so severely that several nearby delegates physically recoiled. High Arbiter, real-time feeds show the Harbingers have already obliterated 3 systems, including a human research outpost with 8,000 souls aboard. We need immediate action, not verification protocols. The chamber fell into stunned silence. The Arbiter's compound eyes focused on Elena with an intensity that made her skin crawl. The silence stretched uncomfortably until the choral representative, a being resembling a delicate insectoid with iridescent wings, broke it with a tone of genuine confusion. But Ambassador, proper procedure must be observed. What else would one do in crisis? Elena stared at the assembled representatives, the pinnacle of advanced civilization, beings whose technology and knowledge surpassed humanity's by eons, and felt a chill run through her. In that moment, she understood with terrible clarity. Humanity was the infant in this room, but perhaps the only adult in a crisis. They'll still be debating the proper font size for the emergency declaration when the Harbingers reach Earth, Elena muttered, her breath forming small clouds in the cold air of the maintenance tunnel. She moved with practiced stealth through the narrow passageway, navigating by the dim emergency lighting strips along the floor. The Harmony Nexus station was a marvel of engineering, but like all complex structures, it required maintenance accessways, forgotten spaces where the elegant design gave way to practical necessity, areas conveniently overlooked by the Axiom Monitor's surveillance systems. Her datapad vibrated silently against her wrist, a proximity warning. Elena pressed herself into a shallow alcove as a maintenance drone hummed past, its sensors sweeping for anomalies. When the corridor cleared, she continued toward the hidden transmitter room she'd established 3 years ago, an insurance policy she'd hoped never to use. The small chamber had once been an auxiliary climate regulation node, long since bypassed by station upgrades. Elena sealed the door behind her and activated the quantum scrambler that would mask any energy signatures. The room's temperature hovered just above freezing, ideal for masking thermal signatures, but miserable for human comfort. She arranged the specialized transmitter components with practiced hands. Within moments, a holographic figure materialized in the center of the room. General Kaido Zhang, his weathered face illuminated by the glow of tactical displays in whatever secure facility he occupied on Luna. "I told them 5 years ago this would happen," he said without greeting, the words heavy with vindication and regret. Dark circles under his eyes suggested he hadn't slept since the news broke. "We presented the intelligence assessment to the Council. They dismissed it as human paranoia. The conclave is paralyzed," Elena replied, her voice quiet despite the room's security measures. "They've initiated assessment of verification protocols, 6 weeks minimum before they even officially acknowledge what's happening." Jean's hologram shifted as he gestured, expanding to reveal a hidden facility beneath Lunar Base Armstrong. The image showed a cavernous hangar where sleek ships with unusual hull configurations were being loaded with cylindrical devices. "These aren't on any official registry," Elena observed. "Officially, they don't exist," Zhang confirmed. "Stealth technology reverse-engineered from salvaged Praxis combined wreckage, invisible to standard conclave detection systems." The hologram shifted again, focusing on the devices being loaded. "Quantum disruptors," Zhang explained. "They create localized tears in space-time, microscopic black holes that collapse almost instantly but can trap anything caught in their event horizon." "Project Slingshot," Elena whispered, recognizing the classified program she'd been briefed on, but never expected to see deployed. Zhang nodded grimly. We've been developing this since day one of joining the conclave. Some of us never trusted that diplomatic utopia. Alina's fingers trembled slightly as she called up the technical specifications on her datapad. The implementation would violate 63 separate conclave treaties, most carrying the penalty of permanent expulsion. Even if this works, we'd need help, she said. The Selvari have targeting systems that could quadruple the disruptor's effectiveness. We know. John's expression was unreadable. That's where you come in. Alina stared at the activation codes now displayed on her datapad, the weight of the decision crushing down on her. General, you're asking me to commit Earth to a course of action that violates the very foundation of our membership in the conclave. I'm asking you to save our species, Jean corrected. Every day we wait, another system falls. How many billions need to die while they debate? Through the general's hologram, Alina could see technicians making final preparations on the stealth vessels. They were hours, perhaps minutes from deployment. When did you receive launch authorization? She asked, though she already suspected the answer. We didn't, Zhang admitted. This operation exists outside normal command structures. Plausible deniability for the civilian government. Alina closed her eyes briefly. What she decided in the next few moments wouldn't just determine military strategy. It would define what humanity represented to the ancient cosmic community they'd so recently joined. Give me 12 hours, she finally said. I need to try one more approach within the system. People are dying while we talk, Ambassador. I know, Alina said, steel entering her voice. But if we're going to break the rules, I want absolute certainty we've tried everything else first. Otherwise, we're no better than the Harbingers, just another force that disregards civilization when it's convenient. As she terminated the connection and gathered her equipment, her mind was already formulating two parallel strategies, one for the official channels that would likely fail, and one for the shadow war humanity was about to wage without allies or authorization. The conclave's grand chamber, once a symbol of interstellar unity, had devolved into factions that Alina navigated like a diplomatic minefield. 3 months of emergency sessions had yielded nothing but procedural achievements, and 12 more fallen systems. The axiomatic collective proposes containment, thundered the crystalline hive mind representative, its multifaceted body flashing with coded light patterns that the translators struggled to interpret. Sacrifice the outer systems to preserve the core. Appeasement is the only historically valid option, countered Prime Metrart Ozio, whose species' 6 eyes never blinked simultaneously, creating an unsettling visual rhythm. The historical precedent from the Vega Compromise clearly establishes that aggressive entities of this nature. Alina slammed her hand down on her console, the sharp sound echoing through the chamber. A breach of protocol so severe that several representatives retracted sensory appendages in shock. While you cite 1,000-year-old precedents, billions are dying in real time. Her voice carried through the acoustically perfect chamber. The Harbingers reached the Arcturus relay yesterday. They're accelerating their advance. The rebuke came not from her adversaries, but from one of her few allies, Carrick, a junior Selvari diplomat whose silvery skin rippled with distress patterns. Ambassador Reyes, he said gently, impetuous disruptions undermine procedural integrity. Later, in the relative privacy of the station's arboretum, a vast chamber designed to accommodate 27 different species concepts of natural beauty. Carrick explained with genuine concern that the conclave's Byzantine structure was intentional, not accidental. After the Crimson Epoch, he said, referencing an interstellar war that had nearly destroyed the galaxy 1,000,000 years before humanity had mastered fire, our ancestors designed governance to prevent hasty action at any cost. Carrick gestured to a hybrid plant whose luminescent blooms responded to neural patterns. Better paralysis than annihilation through impulsivity. That is the foundation of our peace. But what if the threat requires immediate action? Alina asked, watching the blooms dim in response to her frustration. The system assumes no threat could exceed the danger of unilateral response, Carrick admitted. Perhaps this assumption is flawed. The conversation gave Elena fragile hope. The next day, she formally proposed creating a temporary emergency committee with executive powers, a structure that could make decisions without full conclave approval. The elder luminaries, ancient, energy-based entities who claimed to remember the previous Harbinger War, responded with clinical precision. Creating such a body would require a 17-stage ratification process, taking approximately 38 standard months. The Harbingers will reach Earth in 6 weeks at their current acceleration, Elena replied, unable to keep desperation from her voice. Then perhaps Earth was not meant to survive, observed the choral representative with the detached curiosity of an entity discussing weather patterns. Many civilizations have been cosmic ephemera, Ambassador. The governance endures beyond individual species. That night, in her secure communications with General Zhang, Elena gave the coded order she had hoped to avoid. Weather looks stormy. Better bring an umbrella. With that phrase, humanity's stealth ships activated throughout the sector, beginning the unauthorized implementation of Project Slingshot. On her private terminal, Elena watched the deployment countdown with a mixture of resolve and dread. The unauthorized quantum disruptors were humanity's only hope now, and their potential death warrant in the conclave if discovered. As she watched the first stealth ship disappear from tracking, Elena wondered if she had just saved her species or damned them to isolation forever. What troubled her most wasn't the violation of treaties or the risk of discovery, but how easy the decision had ultimately been. 3 months ago, she would have exhausted every diplomatic option. Now, watching the bureaucratic paralysis as worlds burned, she felt something fundamental shifting in her understanding of civilization itself. Elena hadn't slept in 3 days, sustaining herself on military-grade stimulants and the particular desperation that comes from watching worlds die, while wielding unfulfilled power to prevent it. Her small staff of human analysts had taken shifts combing through the 17,000-page conclave charter, searching for any procedural loophole that might break the deadlock. Ambassador, whispered her cultural attaché, Hiroshi Takeda, his voice hoarse from endless reading. Section 9376, subsection C12, the right of distressed minority. Elena scanned the Arctic text, heart racing. The provision hadn't been invoked in over 3,000 years, but it remained valid. A representative whose civilization faced extinction could claim uninterrupted address time, protected from procedural dismissal. When she activated the ancient right during the next session, the chamber's automated systems responded before the delegates could object. Her speaking platform elevated a full meter, and a faint protective field shimmered around her. Enforcement mechanisms built into the station itself, designed to ensure the right couldn't be silenced by majority vote. The Metrarch's chair vibrated with rage, mandibles clicking in protest. This provision requires 72 hours advance. I waive formal address. Elena interrupted, feeling the surge of grim satisfaction as the chair's protests were automatically muted by the system. Instead, I invoke subsection E7, permitting alternative communication formats. What happened next violated every diplomatic norm in the conclave's history. The chamber's lights dimmed without authorization, and the holographic systems, commandeered by Earth's best hackers working through Elena's diplomatic access, activated with a blinding flash. The simulation engulfed the delegates without warning. They found themselves standing not as observers, but as inhabitants on worlds in the Harbinger's path. Each species experienced the destruction of their own cultural centers, the obliteration of their historical treasures, the annihilation of their unique biologies, all accompanied by a coldly accurate countdown based on the enemy's current acceleration. Human military analysts had paired with xenopsychologists to craft a simulation that targeted each species' cultural vulnerabilities with devastating precision. The choral representatives curled into defensive spheres as their ancestral forest cities burned. The Axiom Collective's crystalline form vibrated at frequencies indicating extreme distress as their memory repositories shattered. When the simulation showed the inevitable fall of Metrarch Prime in 143 standard days, Prime Matriarch Ozio emitted a mourning tone not heard in the chamber for 10,000 years. "This is psychological warfare," roared the Krell ambassador, his armored exoskeleton extending battle spines that shredded his ceremonial robes. When the simulation finally ended, 7 delegations formally stormed out, filing immediate censure motions. Belina stood alone on her elevated platform, surrounded by chaos she had deliberately created. "You were warned," she said quietly, though the acoustics carried her voice to every corner. "This is not a negotiation. This is extinction." Hours later, Alina returned to her quarters to find an unexpected gathering waiting. 14 junior diplomats from 9 species, led by Tarek. The Selvary's silver skin pulsed with complex emotion patterns too rapid for human interpretation. "What you did was unconscionable," he said, silver eyes fixed on hers. "And necessary. The elders have forgotten how to fear. We have not." In the days that followed, Alina found herself at the center of an improbable shadow coalition. They met in maintenance corridors, communicating through obsolete channels the conclave monitors deemed too primitive to watch. Carrick revealed that the Selvary had been quietly building defensive systems without conclave approval. A young Axiom Shard admitted their collective had been analyzing Harbinger communication patterns against protocol. Alina's diplomatic career was effectively over. Formal censure proceedings had begun. But as she coordinated between her coalition of frightened junior diplomats, General Zheng's stealth fleet, and Earth's increasingly desperate leadership, she realized she was creating something unprecedented. A rapid response mechanism operating outside the Conclave's paralytic consensus. "It's not particularly elegant," she told Carrick as they reviewed unauthorized resource allocations from their species. But neither was the First United Nations. "The first what?" the Selvary asked. Alina smiled faintly. "Another imperfect solution humans created when perfect governance failed. 70% deployment complete," General Zheng reported through the quantum-encrypted channel. The connection was deteriorating. Each transmission risked detection despite their precautions. Outside Alina's viewport, the massive silhouette of a Harbinger vessel crawled across the distant Andromeda arm, visible now even from the station as the enemy claimed its 20th system. "Another week, and we can activate the first defensive perimeter," Zheng continued, his hologram flickering. "If it works as designed, we might buy enough time for your coalition to convince the others." Alina's shadow coalition had grown beyond her expectations. What began with 14 frightened junior diplomats had evolved into a coordinated network spanning 7 species. The Selvary had shared targeting systems with human forces. The young Axiom Shard had established back-channel communications with military commands from its species. Even the Quarrel, despite their rigid adherence to hierarchy, had been feeding strategic intelligence through their most junior representative. "I'm submitting a formal minority petition at tomorrow's session," Alina said. "The censure vote is expected to fail by a narrow margin. We might have an opening to." A proximity alert cut her off. Alina terminated the transmission instantly and cleared the displays, but anxiety lingered. The timing of security patrols had changed 3 times in the past week, a sign that someone was watching. When Alina entered the conclave chamber for what should have been a routine procedural session the next day, the wrongness hit her immediately. The Matriarch chair's central eyes were fixed on her with uncharacteristic focus. The security drones, normally stationary, hovered at alert positions. The conclave calls Ambassador Alina Reyes of Earth to account, intoned Prime Matriarch Ozio, all 6 eyes blinking in perfect synchronization, something Alina had never seen before. The chamber's displays activated without warning, showing surveillance footage of her shadow meetings, intercepted communications with General Zheng, and detailed scans of human stealth vessels deploying slingshot components. The evidence was overwhelming, presented with a clinical precision designed to counter any defense. "Earth stands accused of treaty violations carrying Class 1 sanctions," continued Ozio. "Deliberation on permanent expulsion will commence according to." This is a direct harbinger attack. Helena interrupted, desperate. You've been manipulated. We don't have time for. Security drones converged. The formal censure passed with unprecedented speed. No debate, no procedural delays. Earth's diplomatic status was suspended effective immediately. Then came the announcement that froze Elena's blood. The Conclave authorized a peacekeeping action against unauthorized human military activities, a euphemism for interspecies war that should have taken months to approve. As she was being escorted from the chamber, Elena caught Prime Metrarch Ozio's gaze and saw something impossible. Beneath the compound iris, a subtle geometric pattern pulsed, reminiscent of the fractal communications observed in harbinger vessels. In that moment, she understood. The enemy hadn't just been advancing physically. They'd infiltrated the conclave itself through some form of psionic manipulation. The security escort, two Krell in ceremonial armor, gripped her arms with strength that would leave bruises. Elena subtly activated her emergency transmitter, Black Glass Protocol. Throughout the station, pre-positioned devices created localized communications blackouts. In the confusion, Tikarik and 3 other coalition members converged on the security corridor. They're inside the Metrarchs, Elena gasped as they fled toward the diplomatic shuttle bay. The Harbingers have been here all along. As their commandeered shuttle broke free from the station, alarms blaring, Elena stared at the tactical display showing human forces now caught between advancing Harbinger fleets and a conclave peacekeeping armada mobilizing from core systems. It was a trap, she whispered. The Harbingers knew we were deploying Slingshot. They used the conclave's own procedures to neutralize the only defense that might have worked. The shuttle accelerated to maximum speed, but Elena took no comfort in their escape. The greatest crisis in human history had become infinitely worse. They must now fight both the enemy and those they had hoped to save. The abandoned Yttrium 7 mining outpost had never been designed to house 7 different species. Environmental systems strained to maintain 16 different atmospheric requirements in hastily sectioned-off chambers connected by emergency airlocks. In what was once the operations center, Elena stood before a makeshift command table where holographic displays showed the unfolding catastrophe. The peacekeeping fleet engaged our forward deployment at 600, General Zhang reported, his hologram flickering from interference. His uniform was torn, a wound visible on his temple. We've lost 37% of our slingshot network. Deployment is stalled at 73%. The assembled coalition members reacted with various expressions of their species' distress. The choral representative spun rapidly in anxiety cycles. The young axiom shard dimmed its luminescence to near darkness. Then we failed, Elena whispered, watching as tactical projections showed the inevitable collapse of their defensive strategy. Carrick, who had been unusually quiet since their escape, stepped forward. His silver skin had dulled to gray from stress and unsuitable atmospheric conditions. There is something we have not shared, he said, a tremor in his harmonics. The Selvari Unity possesses technology developed during the last Harbinger incursion. Empathic resonance scanners that can detect and disrupt their neurological influence. The revelation sent shockwaves through the room. Withholding technology violated the Conclave's most sacred principles. Why didn't you deploy this before? Demanded the Krull representative, battle spines partially extending. It requires direct neural interface with a Harbinger-influenced subject, Tarek explained. The process is usually fatal for both parties. A grim silence followed as the implications sank in. We need to get this technology into the Conclave station, Elena finally said. If we can prove the Metrarchs are compromised, the other species will have to listen. What followed was 2 days of desperate planning. Takarik would lead a covert team to infiltrate the station with the empathic technology. Elena faced a different challenge, convincing the human fleet to stand down against the approaching Conclave forces. The holocall with Admiral Constance Reed went exactly as badly as Elena feared. You want me to surrender my ships to the same people who just declared us enemies of civilization, Reed asked incredulously. The Admiral's weathered face showed the strain of continuous combat operations, while the Harbingers pick off my flanking units. If we fight the Conclave directly, we lose everything, Alina argued. We need to demonstrate good faith while Tkarek's team gathers proof. Good faith? Reed laughed bitterly. You've spent months telling me diplomacy doesn't work with these people. Your entire operation exists because formal channels failed. Now you want me to bet humanity's survival on the same broken system. Before Alina could respond, emergency alerts blared throughout the outpost. The tactical display updated with horrifying new data. The Harbingers had suddenly accelerated their advance, bypassing defensive positions to strike directly toward Earth. They know, Alina realized with cold certainty. They know about Slingshot. With humanity's home system now facing imminent attack, Reed's expression hardened into resolve. You have 48 hours, the Admiral said. Then my fleet does what it was built to do, protect Earth, with or without alien approval. As the transmission ended, Alina turned to Tkarek. Whatever happens, your team needs to succeed. It's our only chance of fighting both fronts at once. The Selvari nodded solemnly. I will not return, he said simply. The neural interface is one-directional. Alina reached out, briefly touching the alien's silver skin, a violation of Selvari custom that Tkarek allowed without comment. I never understood why your species joined the Conclave, she said quietly. You're the only ones who remember fear. Perhaps that is why, Tkarek replied. We feared ourselves as much as others. As their infiltration team prepared for departure, Alina watched the tactical displays showing Earth's defenses mobilizing against the approaching Harbinger vanguard. Their desperate gambit had 48 hours to succeed, or humanity would stand alone against both the most ancient threat in the galaxy and the very civilization it had sought to join. Alina hadn't slept in 72 hours when the encrypted transmission arrived from Tkarek's team. She stumbled to the command center, forcing her exhausted mind to focus on the fragmented video feed, showing the Conclave's central chamber transformed into a battleground. Tkarek stood at the center, the Selvari empathic device grafted directly into his nervous system. Silver tendrils extended from his body to multiple Metrarch delegates, including Prime Ozio, who writhed in what appeared to be agony. Tkarek's skin pulsed with geometric patterns. He was channeling the Harbinger influence through himself. See the truth, he screamed, his voice distorted by pain. The chamber's main display activated, showing neural patterns extracted from the Metrarchs. Unmistakable Harbinger signatures lurking beneath native thought patterns. The video destabilized as security drones converged. The last clear image showed Tkarek's body beginning to crystallize from the feedback, a fatal reaction. His final words came through clearly. Not just the Metrarchs. 30% of all representatives, compromised for decades. The transmission cut to emergency broadcasts from across Conclave space. The carefully maintained order had collapsed into chaos. Nearly a third of the governing body stood revealed as enemy puppets, some for centuries. Species turned against each other, unsure who remained trustworthy. The paralysis was now complete, not from procedure, but from fear. Alina had no time to mourn her friend. Tactical alerts blared as the Harbingers launched simultaneous assaults on 3 core systems, including Sol. The elegant trap springs shut. With the Conclave fragmented and mutual suspicion at its peak, coordinated defense was impossible. They'd been playing us for decades, General Zhang said through a static-filled transmission as his ships engaged Harbinger forces near Jupiter. This isn't an invasion, it's a harvest. With formal governance collapsed and Earth hours from devastation, Alina made her final gambit. Using emergency protocols embedded in the coalition members' personal devices, she bypassed diplomatic channels entirely and broadcast directly to the military commands of all 27 species. The Conclave has fallen, she announced to commanders who had never expected to make decisions without political oversight. But we are not defeated. For months, humanity has been deploying Project Slingshot, a defensive network that, when complete, could trap the Harbinger fleet. She transmitted the complete strategic blueprint, technical specifications, deployment patterns, tactical requirements, holding nothing back. "We need your specialized capabilities to complete what we started," she continued, showing the current deployment map with its vulnerable gaps. "Humanity offers its remaining forces as the vanguard. We will buy time for the network's completion." Responses trickled in slowly, then faster. Military commanders, freed from paralyzed civilian authorities, began coordinating directly. Specialized ships from a dozen species converged on the slingshot gaps. In the midst of this desperate coordination, an unexpected transmission interrupted. From the elder luminaries, the ancient energy beings who had remained silent throughout the crisis. Their communication bypassed standard protocols, appearing directly in the minds of all coalition members simultaneously. "We have failed in our duty to protect," the chorus of ancient voices acknowledged. "The time for truth has come." The revelation that followed shattered Alina's understanding of galactic history. The luminaries revealed that the conclave itself, its structure, its procedures, even its physical architecture, was originally designed by the Harbingers during their last invasion 50,000 years ago. The governance system was specifically engineered to prevent effective resistance through bureaucratic paralysis and enforced consensus. "The trap was laid before most of your species evolved intelligence," the luminaries explained. "A governance framework promising peace while ensuring you could never respond effectively to their return. We knew, but were bound by our own protocols not to interfere." Alina stared at the tactical displays showing desperate battles across the galaxy, understanding finally dawning. The entire interstellar civilization had been operating under an ancient enemy's framework for millennia without realizing it. Their greatest strength turned into the ultimate vulnerability. "They've been farming us," she whispered, the horror of it settling into her bones. "Growing civilizations under perfect conditions for harvest." The command center on the ruined observation deck of the Battle of Arcturus Memorial looked nothing like the ornate conclave chambers. No decorative hierarchy, no ceremonial platforms, just a simple circular table where representatives of the 17 surviving species gathered, their bodies bearing the marks of desperate warfare, prosthetic limbs, healing burns, eyes dimmed from radiation exposure. Admiral Reed, now bearing the scars of 3 direct engagements with Harbinger vessels, stood beside Alina as holograms activated, showing the completed slingshot network that had finally contained the enemy advance after billions of deaths. Human strategic doctrine proved decisive. Acknowledged the Axiom Shard, its crystalline structure permanently darkened from battle sacrifices. While we sought perfect consensus, you prepared for failure modes. The battle had been brutally close. Only the shocking adaptability of the combined fleet, fighting as independent tactical units rather than under centralized command, had achieved victory at the Arcturus Nexus. Human ships, vastly outgunned, had led daring raids to protect the specialized vessels of other species. The Selvari, inspired by Teheric's sacrifice, had deployed modified empathic technology as weapons, breaking Harbinger control networks at the cost of thousands of Selvari lives. The conclave structure was elegant, Alina said, her voice steady despite exhaustion that reached bone deep. Peace for millennia is no small achievement, but the same features that maintain stability became our greatest vulnerability. No emergency protocols, no circuit breakers, no way to rapidly respond when the unthinkable happened. The gathered representatives, once junior diplomats or military officers never meant to lead, now bore the weight of rebuilding civilization. One by one, they activated their communication arrays, transmitting their species' formal acceptance of what would become known as the Arcturus Compact, a new form of interstellar governance based not on perfect consensus, but on resilience, distributed authority, and rapid response capabilities. 6 months later, Alina stood alone at the Earth Memorial, where holographic displays showed the names of the 3 billion humans lost in the conflict. Her diplomatic uniform had been replaced by simple civilian clothes. She reached out, fingers tracing the name of General Zhang, who died ensuring the Slingshot Network's activation. Ambassador Reyes called a voice, and Alina turned to see the young Coral representative, Tick, hovering nearby. Once the most junior member of his delegation, he now led their diplomatic efforts. Just Alina now, she corrected gently. I've resigned my position. The new conclave station designs require your approval, Tick said, extending a data crystal. As primary architect of the compact, your input is essential. Alina accepted the crystal, studying the holographic blueprint that appeared. The new station bore little resemblance to the elegant but fatally flawed Harmony Nexus. Instead, it incorporated aspects from all surviving cultures, including unmistakably human elements that would have been dismissed as primitive just a year earlier. Redundant systems, emergency overrides, and most notably, manual circuit breakers built into every level of governance. Our greatest strength wasn't our weapons or our tactics, Alina mused. It was our inherent distrust of perfect systems, the paranoia born from our troubled history. A paranoia that saved us all, Tick acknowledged. The Harbingers never accounted for a species that would question the very foundation of peace. As the sun set over the memorial, Alina watched ships from a dozen worlds moving through Earth's orbit, no longer visitors to a backwater world, but partners come to learn the human art of constructive skepticism. The price had been unimaginably high, but humanity's legacy would not be technological brilliance or cultural refinement. It would be something far more valuable, the wisdom to build systems that account for their own potential failure. Tikarik once told me that the Selvari joined the Conclave because they feared themselves as much as others, Alina said, watching the first stars appear. Perhaps what we can teach the galaxy is that the right kind of fear, channeled into vigilance rather than paralysis, is civilization's greatest safeguard. Tick's wings hummed in the choral expression of agreement. We built a perfect system with no imperfections. You showed us that imperfection itself was the missing component. As darkness fell, the memorial's lights illuminated the names of the fallen, a somber reminder of the cost. But in orbit above, the framework of the new conclave station took shape, a testament to the resilience that comes not from perfect design, but from the courage to acknowledge that no design is ever truly perfect.